Welcome to I Am. With me, Jeff Koinange. On this series, we're going to be interviewing newsmakers and personalities. Oh my, oh my.
Allah?
Is it me? Is it you?
What are you doing here? This is my show.
What's up?
What are you doing here?
All right. Jeff Koinange. Oh my. Welcome to I Am. So I am Jeff Koinange. Everybody calls me Jeff, from young kids to old folks, but my mother calls me Mwaura. So I was born on January 7th, 1966. I'm the fourth born in a family of 4 kids.
Tell us, Jeff, how old were you when your father died?
Exactly 2 months after I was born, on March 7th, 1966, my father passed away. He had a heart attack and was rushed to hospital, and he had a brain hemorrhage, and he died that night, March 7th, 1966. 2 days later, he was buried. He was very good friends with then President Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, and the president had a very busy schedule that week, and the only window he had was 2 days later. So my dad died on a Monday. He was buried on a Wednesday. My mother could only attend that funeral by sitting in a car, suckling me, the 2-month-old. The rest of the kids were with other family members, but she couldn't even attend physically the burial of her husband.
So how was it growing up in Kiambaa?
I grew up in a village. Kiambaa is where we were raised. My mother had a Volkswagen Beetle. Mom would take us to church, Baptist church, which was opposite the city mortuary. A tiny little church there, not what it is today. It was a tiny little church where there was a Sunday school and there was a main church. After church was the best street as kids. Mom would take us down to Koinange Street. Not named after me, but my grandfather. And she would treat us to chicken rotisserie. What do you guys call them? You have a name for them, rotisserie.
You mean kukupono?
Kukupono. Would have chicken, would have chips, would have sausage. This was our treat. I'm telling you, life was good.
Talk to me about your school life. What was it like?
My mother, she was a very tough woman. She was very determined. And the one thing she wanted to do for us is to give us an education. There was a school called Hospital Hill Primary School. It began right around independence. And it was like what they call an integration school. It was 1/3 white, 1/3 Indian, 1/3 African. When it began, there weren't as many Africans. In fact, there were very few Africans. Fast forward to about late 60s, about 68, my sister Shiro became one of the first Africans there. Wangui followed her a couple of years later, Koinange, and myself in 1972. We were all at Hospital Hill. Half the school was Wazungus, no African teachers. All teachers were Wazungu. Even sports teachers and everything, they were all white.
Did it feel awkward?
It felt very awkward. Freddie and I went to St. Mary's School. This was 1976 January when I was in Standard 5. And St. Mary's was, what a school. That's the place that molded many kids. And we went to school with, some of the most politicians' kids, presidents' kids.
Oh, wait, Jeffney Bobby, when he's cool kid.
You could say, I was a cool kid. Then there was a golf course, there was a rugby field, there was a football field, there was a hockey field, cricket, squash, basketball, swimming. St. Mary's had it all.
What was your biggest achievement in high school?
I wrote a play. I wrote a play when I was in Form 6. And we had the best actor, we had the best playwright, we had best actress as well. I'm telling you, that was my biggest achievement in high school, was writing that play. It wasn't captain of the rugby team. It wasn't captain of the football team. It wasn't captain of the basketball team, which I played. I played all these sports. It was this play.
Did you cast yourself in that play? I was the writer, producer, director, and one of the actors. You know you could have ended up in Hollywood, huh? You know that. Would you have liked that?
If Hollywood comes calling, "Ayin takataje? Allah? Allah? Allah?"
How do we know you went to Saints? What's your proof? How do we know?
What is your problem, man? What is your problem? Come on, man. You could just ask, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was there. You can ask, Senator Gideon Moy, who was there. You can ask Jimmy Wanjigi if you want, he was there. How can you doubt that? Niaje wewe, tuheshimiane.
Oh, man. After you finished high school, what was next?
My mother couldn't afford to take me to college. I decided to get a job. My first job was a company in International Lifehouse. And I was a messenger, I was a driver, and I was like a PA. 3 jobs in one because there was like 4 or 5 people working there. So every single day, that's what I would do.
How old were you then?
So at that time, I was 19. I just left high school at 19 years old. And the jobs that I did were odd jobs. Go take this letter there, get it signed, go do this, go do that. I was a messenger. And I was a driver.
What was the pay like then?
It was like 4,000 shillings.
Ah, watcha.
By the way, 4,000 was decent money back then. Because we were given breakfast, we were given lunch. I only had to use that money for transport and buy stuff at home. So 4,000 was not bad. I'm there for about 8-9 months. My colleague, who had also gone to St. Mary's, happened to be at St. Mary's. Her name was Linda Joshi. She comes up with a newspaper article. And she says, "Jeff, look at this. Check this out. There's this airline called Pan Am, and they're hiring people from Kenya. For the very first time, they're hiring Africans to take them the route from Nairobi to Lagos to Monrovia to Dakar to New York." And I said, this could be good. You fly for free. You stay in hotels around the world. You're meeting people from everywhere. And all you do is work on a plane at 39,000 feet. This could work. So Linda applied, I applied, and 10,000 other Kenyans applied. And a few weeks later, I got another call. They said, "How would you like to go to Miami, Florida, to the Pan Am Flight Academy to train as a flight attendant?" Out of the 10,000 that applied, 39 made it to go to Miami. That's all Pan Am needed. So when the day came at JKIA, everybody showed up to see their kids going overseas. And it was my first overseas trip.
Did you have a passport then? Had you ever traveled outside the country?
No, in fact, not having a passport, how do I get a visa to the US? I'd been rejected a few times for a visa. I think 2-3 times rejected for a visa. But when Pan Am hired me, they had this letter to the embassy. And I walked in and I showed them the letter. And guess what? 24 hours later, I had my US visa. Imagine that. And yes, it was my first overseas trip. Flying from JKIA, first stop was Lagos, Nigeria. Next stop, Monrovia, Liberia. We crossed the Atlantic. It was another 8-9 hours. And we landed at JFK in New York City.
What is the effect on you?
There's snow everywhere in the airport. I'm from Kiamba. I have never seen snow. I'm looking through the window and I'm saying, my God. There was no cell phones there where you can take selfies or, take a picture of the snow. You have to just put it in your mind. The Miami flight is called. 2.5 hours later, we're in Miami, Florida. It's an 8-week training and it's packed, jam-packed. We're learning how to evacuate passengers in case there's a crash, whether it's on land or in the sea. We're learning phrases that only passengers and the pilots can know in case there's a hijacker on board or there's a bomb on board. We're learning all those phrases. And it was great. It was incredible. And then one day,
the instructors come in and say, you know what, we're going to need someone to make the announcements. So, grab the book, the Pan Am book, we called it the Bible. And Jeff, why don't you go up there in the PA system in first class, grab it, and just welcome passengers. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard Pan American Clipper Flight 089 from Nairobi, Kenya, with continuing services to Lagos, Monrovia, Dakar, and New York. All of us are trained in cabin safety, and we ask that you watch and listen carefully as we review the safety features of this Pan American Boeing 747. It was silence just like that. And the instructor said, "Do that again." I said, "Did I make a mistake or something?" He said, "No, man, you're the man. You're the guy that's going to be reading the announcements officially from now on." Just like that, man. Just like that. And I said, "Come on, man. We are now working the planes, real passengers, real flights from Nairobi, Monrovia, Dakar, New York. And I'll do the same thing. I kid you not, 7 times out of 10, passengers will be like, oh man, is that a radio announcement? Is that what is that? Who is that? And they say, yeah, it's that guy over there. You see that guy over there? That's him. We need to talk to this guy. After the service, I'd go back, because, that's as the head flight attendant, go back and meet passengers and talk to them. Hey, kid, you need to go to college, go to university, because that voice of yours is going to make you a lot of money one day. Passenger after passenger after passenger, they tell me the same thing. So I was there for about a year and a half and quit. Why did you quit? I fell in love. Fell in love and moved to New York and married this beautiful woman and went to school, which was a 2-year program. I did that and I graduated top of my class. And from there I went to New York University. I got my bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism. And I started to work right away. I got a job at ABC News, one of the biggest networks in New York. I worked with some big names back in the day, big names that people my age, people my generation would know. I'm talking about the Peter Jennings of this world, the Ted Koppels, huge names. I did that for a year and a half. And in that time, we covered the 1992 US elections. I was a desk assistant, I was Kadayamoko. I would do, tell me, photocopy this. We had photocopies then. Go run, get us coffee. They say, go pick up my laundry, KYM. Being a KYM at ABC News, did it remind you of being a messenger, a driver, a PA back in the day in Kenya? It was sort of a deja vu from my Nairobi days because I was a messenger there. It was great because I was in a network setting. I was in the presence of stars. One day, I got a call from the editor. He says, "Jeff, we have a guest coming in. The governor of Arkansas is coming for an interview in one of our shows. Could you go downstairs and get him?" I said, "No." I get the lift. I go downstairs. Guess who it is? Bill Clinton. You met the one Bill Clinton, as in William Jefferson Clinton? Then he was completely unknown. Nobody knew this governor from this state down in the South. They didn't. I say, "Hey, Governor, come on, welcome." I take him down upstairs. He gets the interview. He leaves. And, that's that. A few years later, I would meet him when I was working for CNN. And he comes in, he's meeting people. Oh, he's occupying the whole room. And sees me and says, "ABC News, New York?" I said, "Mr. President, how do you know this?" He says, "I never forget a face." At this point, he was the 42nd president. Unbelievable. I left ABC News. I got another job with another network called Medical News Network. And it was a startup. I did that for about a year and a half. And they shut down. They gave us severance pay for 3 months. They said, "Guys, sorry, we can't continue." Boom. So I was jobless. Did you tarmac? There you go. That was the tarmac in New York City. I applied. Finally, I got a job. I got a calling from NBC News, which was the competition to ABC News. So now I'm working there. And it's great work. It's overnight shift. So overnight shift, you begin at midnight and you're there till 8. But there are shows throughout to feed. There are shows to work on up until 8 o'clock. So one day I see this story. South Africa. Nelson Mandela has won the elections and the entire world has converged in Pretoria. Journalists from all over the place, they're all in Pretoria filming, hey, first black president, former prisoner, 27 years in jail. Fantastic story for anyone in the world. But then down below, there was this small story about 10,000 people being killed every single day in a tiny little country that nobody could pronounce or even pinpoint on a map called Rwanda. And this went on for 100 days. Do the math. That's 1 million people in 100 days. That's crazy. And people are celebrating what? First black president in South Africa. And I said, you know what? I need to go back home. If we're going to be able to tell our story, I have got to be on the ground. Kwa vile kwa ground, mambo ni tofauti, huh? Ni tofauti. And that's what I did. I applied for a job at Reuters, and that was it. I flew out in September 1995 and started working at Reuters. And we started this program called Africa Journal, which was quite famous for a while, remember? You remember.
Welcome to the last Africa Journal of 1997.
Africa Journal, every Friday, it will be on networks all over the place. And it was fantastic. I would travel to Rwanda, Ethiopia, Liberia.
Decades before life ever returns to normal here in Freetown, the loss of infrastructure.
Africa was never in the news in America. Africa is just a mention in the news, a small mention on the newspapers there. There was no digital, there was no social media then. So people didn't know about Africa. That was one of the reasons I wanted to come back and tell the story. And we had a small team of about 6-7 people. It was the idea of Mohammed Amin, the famous photojournalist who filmed the famine in Ethiopia in 1984. He loved to tell stories. I could tell you many stories about Mohammed Amin. In fact, let me tell you one right now. Idi Amin takes over Uganda. And they've closed the airport and everything. They are not letting anyone into the airport. Mohammed Amin, being the journalist that he is, calls State House Kampala. He says, my name is Mohammed Amin, and I'd like to speak to President Idi Amin. Are you kidding me? The operator says, oh my goodness, this must be a relative. Let me put him through. Really? Boom, boom, he puts the call through. Mohammed Amin says, Mr. President, my name is Mohammed Amin. I'm a journalist. I'd like to come and interview you in Kampala. And Idi Amin says, oh, come, we will open the airport for you. Unfortunately, in 1996, he's on a plane from Addis to Nairobi. He used to fly a lot to Addis. The flight gets hijacked. Oh my goodness. The hijackers want to fly to Australia. The pilot says they don't have enough fuel. And they're flying past Nairobi and said, can you stop in Nairobi and we'll refuel and go. The hijacker said, no way, we'll keep going until we get to Australia. That's our destination. So they bypass Nairobi, they get into the ocean, they're flying, and they get to Comoros Island. And off of Comoros, the plane has run out of fuel, and it dips into the ocean. Quite a few people died, but some survived. Mohammed Amin was not one of them. And people say, perhaps he was hanging out with the hijackers, trying to get their story so that he could tell it to the world. That's the kind of guy he was. What a tragedy. That was Africa Journal for us. It was incredible, amazing. And the traveling was great too. How long did you stay at Reuters? Believe it or not, it was a good 6 years. It was great, from 95 to 2001, a good 6 years. By the way, there are videos on social media about a young Jeff working for KTN. What was that about? When I came back to Kenya from America, after nearly 10 years, and I got the job at Reuters, I told myself I want to reconnect with Kenyans. And the only way to reconnect then was try and get on local TV. Do the evening news. I could do that in the evening, and then I work for Reuters in the daytime. So I applied for a job at KTN as an anchor, and I got it. And the first time that I went on air, I remember the switchboard was on fire. Good evening, I'm Jeff Koinange, and this is KTN News at 9. Oh my God, it was crazy. It was nuts. The men hated it, but the women loved it. So fast forward, I'm in South Africa for a story, and I get this knock on my room. Boom, boom, boom. There's a couple of guys. Says, hey, we're so and so. We're from CNN. We like what you've been doing for Africa Journal, for Reuters. We'd like to invite you to be a part of CNN. I said, oh, I don't know, man. And they said, look, we're opening a bureau in Lagos. We want you to be Lagos bureau chief. I said, Lagos? Nigeria? Me? Leaving South Africa? Kariki. Who does that? They said, you know what? We're not going to push you. Here's a ticket. We'll see you in Atlanta. Thought about it. I said, you know what? Leave Johannesburg, go to Lagos, never been there. Is it going to be okay? Okay, why not? What's the worst that can happen? I land in Atlanta. They pick me up, take me to the Omni Center, I remember so well, CNN headquarters. And the first thing you see, giant letters, CNN. You enter, everything is just, I say, you know what? Maybe. So the next 3-4 days, I'm interviewing, I'm seeing the bosses, the president, the head of news, we're talking, and they're saying, we could use someone like you in Lagos. I mean, you could do well, and you could climb the ranks. I get the job. I'm Lagos bureau chief, fly to Lagos, Nigeria. In the beginning, I was regretting a lot of things. I said, I missed Johannesburg, civilization, to be here. Hi. And we started working. It wasn't just Nigeria. I covered all of West Africa. And guess what? I got to visit my old hunting ground of Monrovia, Liberia. And I wanted to go back to a hotel that we had filmed way back. That was the biggest hotel in Africa, built by the Tubman administration in the 70s. It was a luxury hotel with 50 villas. Each villa represented a country in Africa because Liberia was the head of the OAU, and they built this hotel called Hotel Africa. The swimming pool in the hotel was in the shape of Africa, and the villas were amazing, incredible. And Liberia was the place to be, but it had such a checkered history. How is Liberia today? We got a chance to visit Liberia in 2020, around there. Welcome to Monrovia, capital of Africa's oldest republic, Liberia, established as a colony for freed American slaves back in 1822. I wanted to take my crew to see the places that we had been and what Liberia had become. And we visited this hotel I was talking about earlier on called Hotel Africa.
Now, back in 1979, then President William Talbot was made the chairman of what was then the Organization of African Unity. He decided to impress his fellow heads of state by building a hotel that would last for decades. He called it Hotel Africa. I remember coming to this very place back in 1986, working as a flight attendant for Pan Am. We swam in this pool, we danced in the club, we slept in the rooms upstairs. But this is what happens when a country turns on itself.
It broke my heart. Completely broke my heart. It was so sad to see. So during that time, did they manage to rebuild Monrovia? Can you imagine that they've never rebuilt it since then? And it's sitting right there. It's sitting right there, literally overlooking the beach, the Atlantic Ocean. And it's sad to see. By the way, I remember watching the piece that you did on a pastor who had a very infamous name back in the day, Butt Naked. Why? How? You're asking why his name was General Butt Naked. He says, when they were going to fight another gang or, going to occupy another neighborhood, they would all strip to their nakedness, bare minimum, nothing. Atangotha, hawakuwa nayo.
So he was the real commando.
And then they would put themselves, potions, those African potions, thinking that the bullets would bounce off of them.
Guy.
Of course, many of them died during the conflict, but General Butt Naked never got a single bullet fired at him.
Wait.
Never. And, he was one of the nastiest of them all. He survived the entire Civil War.
Watch.
Fast forward, we're in Monrovia in 2020, and I asked one of the fixers on the ground, I said, this guy, is he still around? General Butt Naked. Did he die? Did he, leave the country? Is he around? They said, believe it or not, he has become a pastor now. And they brought him to us. And the first question I asked is, General Butt Naked, you were a nasty, nasty man during your time, weren't you? He says, yes. I killed a lot of people. I raped a lot of women. It was a different time. But, I found peace and I found God.
What I'm Evangelist Joshua Milton Bly. I'm the one they used to call General Butt Naked.
Oh, man. Liberia.
Behind me, finishing touches are being put to the country's largest memorial to coincide with the 10th anniversary of one of the most brutal atrocities of the 20th century. Now, there are 130 such memorials spread across the country in honor of the close to 1 million people who lost their lives in the spring of 1994.
I always wanted to visit Rwanda and see what it was like. So 10 years after the genocide, they were commemorating the genocide in 2004. And CNN sent us as the crew and said, give us the stories, send the stories. And we went there. And I'm telling you, it was one of the scariest stories I ever did. Traveling outside Kigali. And we went to several places, numerous places where genocide had happened. I remember one place called Nharama, about 25, 30 minutes outside Kigali. And we entered this church. And when we walked in, there were bodies, skeletons of like 5,000 people in the church. And they had been killed where they lay. In other words, in the pews, in the side, in the podium. That's where they were killed by the rebels.
This was the scene at the Catholic Church in Nharama, a 2-hour drive from the capital, Kigali, a decade ago. Thousands of butchered bodies littered the church's compound. And by the time the day was over 5,000 of them lay dead.
Oh my God, I've never felt such chills. And I walked up on the podium at one point, and there was a Bible where the preacher had been preaching. And I looked at one verse in the Bible that says, "Thou shalt not kill." And yet everybody in this church had been killed. In the back of the church, there was like a bookshelf, like this one over here, a bookshelf. Skulls of people all over the place. Some had bullet wounds, some had axe wounds, some had holes pricked in their heads. Oh, it was so scary. By the time we left there, I said, my God, why did they leave this place like this? And I asked the people, why? Why didn't you bury these people? They said, no, we have to leave it as a reminder. Next town over, we went. There was a secondary school. Same thing. Bodies, skulls, remnants of people who had been left where they lay. So they got all the skulls, all the bones, all the remains, which was, hundreds of thousands. And they brought them to Kigali and they built a memorial. It's called the Kigali Genocide Memorial. In fact, this was 2004, so they, slowly throughout the years, and we visited this Kigali Genocide Memorial when I worked for Citizen TV.
Now, a walk through this genocide memorial here in Kigali is like walking into hell. The scenes that took place some 26 years ago, they come back to haunt you. They're as eye-popping as they are blood-curdling.
And there was it was really well done. I mean, better than leaving the bodies in the churches. And there were these graves and crypts and everything put there, 250,000 of them. People killed. And they had names as well. They put all the names on a wall, all the names of the dead, 250,000 of them. But they can never forget what happened in April 1994.
What was your biggest story in Nigeria?
So then I'm in Nigeria covering the biggest story probably of my career then. The rebels in the Niger Delta, and the Niger Delta is where most of the resources are, and we're talking oil, 2 million barrels of oil a day. But the rebels had decided, you know what? You people, you multinationals, you're not doing anything for us. We're going to take over this land and you cannot do anything about it, and we'll sell the oil ourselves. So for a year, I'd been communicating. I got contacts here, I got contacts there. I'd been communicating with their leadership. Finally found the guy who was in charge. And I said, you know what? We want to come down and interview you. Tell us your story. The whole world wants to know your story. And they agreed. He says, come to a place called Wari. It's a town in the Delta. And, we'll take it from there. So we get there with my crew, check into a hotel. Before we know it, there's a knock on my door saying, hey, guy, be there tomorrow morning. Be outside at 6 a.m. We'll be taking a boat and we'll go down to see our boss. We get into the waters. We're driving down the Niger Delta. As we're getting closer to where we're going, suddenly we hear shots being fired. Boom, boom, boom. And they're landing in the water right near us. And we look up and we say, oh my God, these guys have seen us and they want to kill us. It was scary. We get to this place and the rebels are now chanting and marching and doing their thing because they had just kidnapped 32 Filipino shipmates on a ship. They had kidnapped them out in the sea and they had brought them now to their headquarters and they were marching and jumping around them.
All those scenes you're describing, were you filming them all?
Yes. Guess what? They allowed us to film all this. And we said, you know what, can we interview the Filipinos? Because, we want to know their story. And they said, yeah, go ahead. Oh, God, go ahead now. And we interviewed a couple of the captain, and he said they were so scared. They were doing, they weren't harming anybody. They just wanted to go home, blah, blah, blah. And interviewed a couple of other shipmates. And, they all spoke English, obviously. And, I got at least that side of the story. In the meantime, the rebels are still going boom, 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 boom. And I said, where's your leader? We need to meet your leader because, we're running out of time. And they said, our leader doesn't want to talk to you right now, but he will talk to you in the high seas. We got into the swamps and made it to the high seas. And sure enough, he was there. Called himself Jomo. And we interviewed him. I said, what do you want? What is this you want? I mean, the Nigerian government can't come here. Why don't you negotiate? He says, no, there's no negotiation. These people don't listen to us, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he gave me great sound bites in the seas. And I said to myself, you know what? It's a big story. It's a huge story. We need to get some reactions from the government. It's only fair we get reactions from the Nigerian government.
What was the reaction from the Nigerian government?
Wah! The Nigerian government was livid. Livid. One, the Manila, the Philippine government, was all over them saying, you have our people. What's going on? Right? Then they came back and said, no, this reporter, we don't like him. He stage managed the whole thing. Those were actors he was using in the video. 48 hours later, the Filipino hostages were released, put on a plane back to Manila. So they went back and told their story. But the Nigerians insisted that this whole thing was stage managed. And they said, we don't want this man anymore in this country. He is persona non grata in this country. And they put so much pressure on CNN, they said, we'll never advertise with you people as long as this guy is on air.
So the question is, were you suspended? Were you fired? Were you let go? What happened?
They fired me. They said, you know what? we'll have to let you go. But, we'll take care of you until your child is born, and, till the end of the year, we'll take care of you, which is really nice of them. So I was in Johannesburg from May, about 6 months, next 6 months. Jamal, our son, was born in July, and, at least, even if I wasn't working, I was okay. Nilikuwa sawa, nilikuwa naika kiru.
So once again, how did you find yourself back in Kenya?
Around November, I get a call from Rose Kimotho. I didn't even know who she was. But she called me and she says, "Hey, Jeff, I'm Rose Kimotho. I'm starting this network called K24. We would like you to come and be one of our anchors." And I said, "You know what? Why not? Let me give it a chance." So I came to Nairobi in November 2007. It was sort of like CNN, but obviously low budget. And then in the midst of it all, I said, "You know what? There's this window where I could interview people." Sure enough, we found a bench, and we started a show called Capital Talk. I did 1,520 shows in 5 years because it was every single day.
Wait. You worked for 2 years non-stop?
Every day for 7 days for 2 years.
Did you ever get tired or burnt out?
Look, Kenya had what? 30 million people at that time, 40 million people. There's plenty of people to interview. Unbelievable. It was great. We got an exclusive from Ocampo in The Hague. We found a bench in a park in The Hague, and I sat him on the bench. And I asked him this one question I'll never forget. I said, "You know what, Chief Prosecutor, this could be one of the cases where you have the wrong suspects and the right case."
That for me is the missing part.
That played over and over and over again. Then 2013 came around, and I decided, you know what, I've had enough, man. So I got a job from a Nigerian friend of mine back to Nigeria, and he said, "Look, I'm starting a network." Another startup guy. I'm starting a network called Arise, and I want you to be one of my guys, one of my main anchors. I said, "Where's it going to be based?" He said, "London." And then one day, I didn't get paid for 3 months. And I decided, I'm going home. KTN said, "Hey, we have a slot in prime time. And you can bring that bench you used to have to KTN, and we'll call it JKL." People loved the KTN bench, up until probably the last interview with the man with the same name twice, Miguna. Right next to him was Esther Pesaris. And, he just went off on her. And KTN responded and they said, "This was not good. This is bad." And I packed up my bags and moved to Citizen Television.
Hi, my name is Jeff Koinange. And yes, JKL is back.
8 years later, almost 8 years later, we're still doing JK Live.
Who are some of the famous people you've interviewed?
You know what? I was so privileged, I was so privileged to have the access to these people. And, with many leaders, they have to trust you. Many leaders. President Paul Kagame, he's got to trust you to talk to you. President Olusegun Obasanjo, also, they trust you. In the beginning, he hated the stories I did about Nigeria. He told me one day that when you report stories, not everything is as it seems. It stuck with me. Nelson Mandela, it was in Burkina Faso when he first saw me and says, "Oh, my friend, where you from? Where you from?" I said, "I'm from Kenya, Mr. President." He said, "Oh, what is your name?" I said, "My name is Jeff Koinange." "That name Koinange is very familiar. I knew your father or grandfather when we were in the struggle. So that means you come from a lineage of chiefs. And don't forget that, my son. Don't forget. You come from a lineage of chiefs." I said, "Yes, Mr. President, that's right." Fast forward, we're in Pretoria covering these stories. Every time he would see me in the crowd, he'd say, "The son of chiefs is here. When am I going to get a grandchild? Do you need some help?" Fast forward again, our son is born, and we're about to leave South Africa. And I called Mandela's aide, her name was Zelda Koinange. And I said, Zelda, the president said, you know, when a son is born, we can bring him to him. Can we do that? Are we going to have time? Next day we're there, wake up early. Sure enough, at 11:50, motorcade. He gets in his office, his people come and say, okay, you're going to be there in 10 minutes, get ready. As I'm picking up Jamal, I get a smell from his nappy. He's 8 months old. I rushed him to the bathroom. I wiped him down as quickly as I could with wet wipes, and then I put in a diaper. This, you know, I had to do it in like 3 minutes. Come out, the door's open, they're still waiting. Shoo, the old man is there. We go in. Oh, ha, ha, ha. The son of chiefs has returned. And you bring me a small chief as well. Ho, ho, ho. Thank you, thank you. My son reached out to Nelson Mandela's face and was stroking his chin, just like this. And Mandela was smiling at this boy. It's like they connected in a way. But then in between there was Bill Clinton, there was Charles Taylor, Salva Kiir in South Sudan. You know, we got exclusive access to interview him at J1, that's what they called their state house. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first woman president in Africa, she got her 2 terms. Her opponent then was a guy called George Weah.
My brother. This is how you live. Nice and simple, man. Nice and simple.
I can go on and on and on. And it was a privilege. How about local interviews? I've interviewed President Uhuru Kenyatta, President William Ruto, and other high-ranking Kenyans. You know, with my show, we invite just about everybody. What do you think of people who say that you are dynasty? You get a high-ranking job, you lose it, you're fired, you get, you know, you're like I always say I'm like a phoenix. I always rise out of the ashes. And despite what people might think of me as privileged, I come from Gina Kubwa, I don't get it. I must have missed the memo. But I slip, I fall, I get up. Slip, I fall, I get up. And that's the way people should do. You know, it's not a flat line. Life is not a flat line. It's like a pulse. You will rise up, you will go down. You will rise up, you will go down. You will rise up, you will go down. And when you go down, you rise up. You know, when you fall off that horse, you get up, you dust yourself off, get back on the damn horse and ride it. That's what I do. That's what I'll keep doing as long as I have the strength. Maybe that's why I'm still standing. I'm still standing. Keep going, JK Live, keep going. Today was my interview on I Am. Tomorrow could be you. Stay tuned, because you know it's gonna be smoking.